Sober Ladies. Thank you so much for joining me today for this episode of the Confident Sober Women live series. I am talking a ton about stress and overwhelm this month and just kind of all about anxiety and just dealing with all of that beyond recovery because it's not easy, right? It's not always um, a walk in the park living this life. Like, in fact, today, due to life, truly, I was supposed to be live at 12, but that didn't happen, so that's okay. I just shifted my plan, and I'm here now, and it's 2, and hopefully a lot of you got my message that I was going to be a little late, and that's just how it goes. So I want to talk today about what are your own personal triggers for stress and overwhelm and maybe even anxiety in recovery. Just because we're sober doesn't mean that we don't have stress and anxiety and overwhelm, right? Because life just brings all of that to us. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And then later this week, I'm going to be live again to share with you my 5 ways to deal with those, right? My top 5 ways to kind of deal with that stress and anxiety triggers, especially so that we can begin to make some changes in that area. Okay, so in order for us to make any changes in any area, right, we really need to understand what's going on. So that's kind of what today is all about. Like, why is this even important to know our triggers for stress and overwhelm? I mean, it's a valid question, right? Why do we need to know that? Well, for one thing, it's pretty hard to really get a handle on something and make any changes with it if you don't know what it is, right? It's nearly impossible to implement an effective prevention strategy if you don't know what those kind of preliminary events or triggers, as we typically use in modern times. If you don't know what those are, then it's really tough for us to sort of insert little coping skills and strategies along the way to help prevent those situations. So I usually suggest in all of my work in different areas with women in sobriety is that we take an inventory. And so what I mean by that is really taking kind of a deep dive into whatever we're looking at. In this case, the stress triggers, and really begin to really get to know them. When are they happening? Where? Who triggers them? What places are triggering them? All that kind of stuff. That's what I mean by when I say inventory. So you can use a journal, you can use your phone, or really whatever you like to kind of take notes around these things that we're going to talk about today for the next few days or weeks or however long you'd like to assess what your true personal triggers are. This is very much like the inventory I talk about in the Understanding Negative Thinking Patterns Challenge, which, if you haven't done it yet, you can find that in the guide section of this group. It's free, it's right in there, it's self-guided. You can literally do it today and start to understand a lot about your own negative thinking patterns, which, by the way, might be part of a trigger for your stress and anxiety. And if it's not a trigger for it, it certainly is going to continue to help perpetuate the stress and anxiety experience when those negative thinking patterns get activated. So if you haven't done it, head over to the guide section when we're done here and check out that Understanding Negative Thinking Patterns Challenge. It's pretty awesome, and you're really going to get a good understanding about what is going on in your brain, right? So this is just going to be a stress and overwhelm inventory, which is just slightly different because we're looking at something different. And we're going to really understand when, why, and how you get particularly activated, right? So I want you to ask yourself, what are your most common stressors? When do you find that you typically get overwhelmed? Are there particular people or places that bring on more stress than others? Maybe you struggle with change or a lack of routine, like change in the routine or maybe lack of a routine. Maybe that's part of your challenge. What about when something unexpected happens? Are you struggling to juggle work and family? Is it like a time management issue? Do you feel overwhelmed by having to do it all, right? You're kind of like feeling like everything is piling on you. Do you tend to rely on excess caffeine to get through your day? Or maybe it's just meeting new people. Maybe meeting new people is stressful for you. So each of us has our own experience with stress, and of course we all have our own personal histories of trauma and dysfunction, and all of that leaves an imprint on our mind and can create additional opportunities for these kinds of triggers, right? So doing this stress inventory will tease out these situations regarding people and places and things that might cause your body and your mind to get activated in this negative kind of way. So when the stressful event happens or you find yourself in a prolonged period of overwhelm, I want you to pay attention to how your body feels. Maybe you can just sort of imagine it right now. Like you're hopefully not in the middle of a stressful situation right now. Maybe you are, and so you have it fresh in your mind. But kind of imagine something, and going forward, you're going to take this inventory in the actual situations. You're going to write these things down. But if you can imagine, what what goes through your mind? What are your thoughts? And how does your body feel? Do you get a physical reaction? Maybe you've never paid attention to that before, and so now you're going to start paying attention, and you might find out that yes, your body does physically react a lot to stressful events. Because paying a close attention to your physical reaction to situations in when you first start to get triggered is really important. You can get a lot of information from that. And I want you to begin to notice what happens in your body the next time you experience stress and overwhelm. Because our bodies really do provide us with a ton of information. It's just that most often we don't really pay attention to it. We kind of brush it off, or we or ignore it, or we make excuses for it, and we kind of don't connect it to the fact that it's a stress response, or every time I see this particular person, it makes me feel overwhelmed, and my heart's racing, or my palms are sweaty, or my stomach is sick. A lot of times we kind of just ignore that stuff. So I want you to pay attention to that. That's going to be part of your inventory. And I want you to notice where you feel it in your body. And then when does that start happening? When in the situation? Is it like right before the stress? Is it the whole time? Is it after the stress is over? And how long does it last? So all of those parts are part of your inventory. Also, what was happening right before the situation turned really stressful? What was kind of going on right before that? And then what was happening right after? So those are some really good things to add to your inventory as well. Again, what are your thoughts during this time? Does your brain immediately go to the negative? Does it turn into those beliefs that you have about yourself that are not so pleasant? And even though you maybe already worked on a lot of these, do you find that they start to creep back in? Do you say things like, I feel like my head is going to explode, or my heart is beating out of my chest? Or do you refer to people negatively or resort to name calling? These are all really helpful things to know because they can be indicators that you are in a stressful situation, right? These can be kind of go-to responses that you can now use once you have your inventory as a guide to help insert those tools and strategies that we're going to talk about later this week. So when you start to feel those things or start hearing those words in your brain, you can start saying, I need a tool for this. So some of the most common stress and overwhelm triggers are things like health, family, finances, work, and certainly relationships of all kinds, right? Any kind of relationships. And for most of us, we have kind of all of these things happening at the same time. I mean, most of us have to work most days of the week. We all have families. We have relationships that are family or not. And so there's a lot going on for us. We all have health, whether it's good or mediocre or bad. We all have it, right? And knowing what is going to send your cortisol levels or the stress hormone through the roof is necessary so you can prepare as much as possible. So this kind of inventory and preliminary work really allows you to have those go-to strategies for stress relief at the ready. They'll be at your fingertips. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about the next time we meet. I'm going to share with you the 5 ways to deal with the most common triggers that come from all of these things that we've just talked about. So for today, what I'm asking is you to start to take an inventory of your stress and your overwhelm. So I want you to really pay attention to what was happening right before you really started to get stressed out. Like what places, people, and things were going on in your life that were creating the stress. Where can you feel it in your body? How does your body react when you start to get into that stress? What happens to you after the stressful situation? And what are your thoughts? So those are some of the main areas that I want you to pay attention to in that stress and overwhelm inventory. And then we're going to use that to help guide us as we insert the tools to deal with the most common triggers. Okay? I hope this was super helpful so you can begin to understand your own stress and overwhelm. And make sure you join me later this week. Pay attention. It'll be Wednesday or Thursday, and it'll be at 12 o'clock noon. Talk to you soon. Bye.